Hey Atlasers! In this video I'm going to show you how to look up square coverage, download and interpret a square map, and navigate to your point counts. First off, let's take a look at the coverage map to find a square that needs our help. Open up a Google search and look for Ontario Breeding Bird Atlas. And click on the first link that pops up. This will take you to the Atlas's homepage. Under Tools and Resources, select Coverage Map. Let's look for a square that hasn't had anything done in it yet. Under Layers, click on Number of Point Counts. I'm also going to highlight priority squares and show square assignments. Then click on Update Map. The red and orange boxes indicated on the map show high and medium priority squares to cover. This does not mean that the other squares aren't important, but it helps us target our coverage in certain areas, especially in the north, where there's lots of land and few people. The different shades of blue show you how many point counts have been done in the square so far in the current atlas. Squares without any blue have not had any point counts done yet. Dots like this indicate that the square has been assigned to a particular person. It's best to avoid doing any work in these squares without first talking to the regional coordinator. And in general, it's a good idea to reach out to the regional coordinator to help figure out where to put in your effort, since this map can sometimes be a little bit out of date. For the purposes of this demo, though, I'm going to look for a square that's high priority, unassigned, and hasn't had any point counts done in it yet. It looks like 16 TCU 47 might meet these criteria. By clicking on it, I can see that this square hasn't had any point counts done, is unassigned, and has 0 effort hours. Now I want to know where in this square to do my point counts. Let's go back to the Ontario Breeding Bird Atlas homepage and hover over Tools and Resources again. This time let's click on Square Resources. Here you see a map that looks similar to the one we just looked at. The main difference with this map, however, is it shows the locations of point counts within each square. In order to find them, though, or to see them, you have to zoom in pretty close. You can also pan around between squares. However, the easiest way to find a particular square you're looking for is to click on this Find Square button to the right. In the box, I'll type the number of the square I'm interested in, 16 TCU 47, and I'll click on Find Square again. The square should now appear at the bottom of this table, or at the bottom of this window in a table format. With the cursor, click on the square number or anywhere on the corresponding row of this little table, and the map will automatically pan over to the square you want. You can use this map to see generally where in the square the points are located, and being a Google Maps extension, you can also view it as a satellite. This can be a great way to see what kind of habitats you might encounter at each point. However, this map is just a web-based application, which means you won't be able to view it when you're offline, and it has certain limitations. What we really want is a more detailed map that can be printed out or saved onto a phone for use in the field. At the right-hand side of the Atlas Square Resources window, you'll see a list of tools available for this square. I'll quickly go through each of these, starting from the bottom. Keep in mind, though, that if you're doing this on a phone, you may not see this list right away, and you may have to pan over to the far right. This is just because the page wasn't really designed for use on phones. but it can still be used. First of all, you can view the square summary sheet, which lists all the square statistics, including effort and species breeding evidence in Atlas II and Atlas III. Here's the list of species found so far in the square in Atlas III in a simpler format. It looks like so far in Atlas III, 27 species have been found in this square. Likely these are all incidental records since there weren't any coverage hours reported for the square. Going back to the Atlas Square Resources page, you also have the option to download all the point coordinates in either a Google Earth KMZ file, a GPX file, or a CSV file, each of which has its own advantages. But first what we want to do is download the PDF square map. This opens as a new HTML window, but you can also download it to your computer using the little down arrow at the top right corner, or print it off directly with this button here. The square map is useful in a number of ways. First of all, it shows you where all the predefined on-road points are located within the square, and it lists the UTM coordinates for each of these points. On-road points are always assigned a number and shown on the square map as a black cross. The lowest 10 numbers are usually points that were done in Atlas II, unless the square wasn't done at all in Atlas II. Higher numbers were randomly generated for Atlas III to create a pool of possible points atlasers could choose from in order to get the square up to its 20 minimum on-road point counts. These random points were placed along roads while maintaining a minimum 500 meter separation distance. Under normal circumstances, the atlaser would survey points 1 through 10, then proceed to survey points 11 through 20. However, if 11 through 20 are inaccessible, unsafe to access, or too time-consuming to reach, the atlaser can select from points 21 to 40 as needed. If none of the predefined points work, the atlaser would then have to create new points to replace them, making sure to space them 500 meters apart and along roadways. Another type of point you'll sometimes see on these maps are off-road points. On the square map, predefined off-road points are indicated with a red circle and assigned a letter. These points were surveyed in Atlas II and should be revisited in Atlas III if possible. Many squares didn't have off-road points done in Atlas II and therefore do not have any predefined off-road points for Atlas III. In our case, we can see that our square has two predefined points, A and B. We should try to survey these, but we'll also need to add 3 more off-road points in order to get the square up to its minimum of 5 off-road point counts. The 3 points that we choose should be placed at least 100 meters from any road, at least 300 meters from each other, and in the appropriate habitat. Many people ask, how do you know what habitat type to put your points in? There's actually a handy little guide at the bottom of the square map that tells you exactly how many points need to be in each habitat type. As you can see, the map is also classified by land cover type. In our case, it looks like point A is positioned in mixed forest and B is in broadleaf forest. Since we still need 2 points in shrubland and 1 more point in mixed forest, we could decide to put them somewhere like here, here, and here. You can mark these spots on paper if you print out the map, or you can mark them on the computer in a basic drawing software like Microsoft Paint. The land cover shown on these square maps can sometimes be inaccurate. Another way to check the habitat type is by going back to the Google Maps satellite view on the Atlas Square Resources page and zooming in, or by loading the KMC points file into Google Earth. Keep in mind that either of these 2 methods will only work with internet, so you'll need to do this before you go out into the field. Once you're sure that your extra off-road points are in the right habitat, you can figure out the UTM coordinates by simply hovering your mouse over the spot in Google Earth. The coordinates will be displayed at the bottom of the program here. You can also do this the old-fashioned way by using the 1 kilometer grid on the square map and the 100-meter tick marks. Each one of these boxes represents 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer squared. And as you can see, they are indicated by a UTM coordinate number. Once you figure out your coordinates, remember to write them down somewhere. Now we have our square map and all our point coordinates. But how do we make sure we actually get to the right coordinates once we're out in the field? There are a couple different ways of doing this. The first way is to load the coordinates into a handheld GPS unit, like a Garmin device, and navigate to the coordinates. To do this, go back to the Square Resources page and download the GPX file under tools available for this square. Then plug in your handheld unit. You'll need some sort of interface software on your computer. For Garmin devices, this is usually called Basecamp. But if you've used your GPS before, you probably already have this installed. Open up the interface software and import the GPX file. You may first want to create a folder to put the points into once they get imported. To import the files, go to File and then Import into the folder you just created for the square 16 TCU 47. Navigate to where the GPX file was saved when you downloaded it. Usually this will be in your Downloads folder. And import. Now your folder contains all of the point counts in the square. The final step is to get them into your Garmin GPS unit. To do this, simply drag and drop the waypoints file into your Garmin device folder. Unplug your device and power it on. After waiting a few moments for it to start up, you should see the points now displayed on the map within your device in the correct square. You'll have to manually enter the coordinates of any newly created off-road points. You can do this by making a waypoint, then editing the coordinates in your GPS unit, or by creating the points in your interface software and transferring them over to your device folder, just like we did for the on-road points. Now that all the points are saved in your GPS unit, you're ready to go out in the field and navigate to your points. When you get close to your point, take out your GPS unit and search for the point under Find Waypoints. This may vary slightly depending on the device you have. The device should show a distance and bearing to the point. Using your GPS and compass, follow the bearing until the GPS shows you are within about 10 meters of the point. Then wait a few seconds for the signal to calibrate. Another way of navigating to point counts, and my personal preferred method, is by downloading the Avenza Maps app to your phone. On your phone, open Google and search for Avenza Maps. Find the link to install the app through the App Store, which will be slightly different depending on whether you have an iPhone or an Android. You'll also need to get the PDF Square Map onto your phone, either by downloading it directly from the Square Resources page, or by emailing it to yourself and saving it to your phone from your email. Now that you have Avenza Maps installed and your Square Map saved to your phone, simply navigate to the PDF file and click on it. This file is usually stored in a folder called Downloads under My Files or something similar. Your phone should ask how you want to open the file, and Avenza Maps should show up as an option. Click on Avenza Maps. Now you should see the PDF square map displayed in the Avenza app. Once you physically enter the square, a little blue dot will appear over the PDF map, showing your current position on the map. You can test it out loading the map of the square you live in. If you don't see the blue dot where your house is, Go into your phone's settings and make sure that location services are turned on. To find your point in the field using Avenza Maps, take out your phone, open up the square map in Avenza, and look for your first point. Walk towards it, and when the dot lines up with the point count marker indicated on the map, you should be in the right place. If you have any doubts about the accuracy, you can check it against what your GPS tells you, but in most cases you should find the square maps and your phone's GPS signal to be just as accurate as your handheld GPS. The real beauty of this is that it can be done anywhere, since your phone is using satellites to determine your location, not the cell network. If you don't have a GPS unit and aren't able to use Avenza for whatever reason, a third way of finding points is through the Nature Counts app. Within the app, click on Create, then Atlas Point Count. To view point counts displayed on a map, click on Edit Location. As long as your phone's location services are turned on, you should see where you are, marked as a blue dot, and where all the points around you are on a map that looks very similar to the one on the website. Something like this. The points are preloaded in the app, so there's no need to have internet to see them. However, to see the background satellite imagery, you'll need to have a data connection. That's it! You've reached your point count. Now you can finally start counting birds. Thanks for listening. Hopefully now you feel better prepared to use the coverage map and other tools on the Atlas website, download and interpret square maps, and navigate to point counts. Don't forget to check out all the other useful videos on the Atlas YouTube channel, and we'd like to thank all of you for your help and support. We couldn't do it without volunteers like you.